Good morning. This is the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. This is our weekly hearing. It is 9 a.m. Wednesday, September 24th. We'll start with a roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath,
Here.
Commissioner Ray,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 commissioners present.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see everyone this morning. We have commissioner comments is up next. Do we have comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, and hearings manager Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, I do not see a consent agenda. Do we have a consent agenda on our schedule?
Apologies, that's correct. No consent agenda.
No, that's weird. Okay. We then would elevate Deputy Director Lauren Mercer-Gelman for an introduction to our next panel, which is a planning and permitting presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the Commission and those joining us online. I will quickly kick it over to our Planning and Permitting Manager to get started on that presentation, but wanted to give some more context for a larger initiative that this is a part of. So at the request of Commissioner Messner, I've been working on putting together a regular cadence of staff updates and presentations to the Commission, with the goal of really increasing transparency, particularly into the work of the ECMC staff that's not always front and center with the Commission. So the first of these, excuse me, was actually the presentation you had last month from Matthew Blackman about our finance unit and the budget. That was one. We've got planning and permitting here today. And the goal of this program will be that once a month, we have at least once a month, one of our ECMC units coming to you with a presentation. And sometimes they will be sort of an overview of what does a particular unit do that you might not be as familiar with. And sometimes there'll be deep dives on subject matter that unit works on. So the goal is to have some variety, have these be very informative presentations, both to the Commission and to our stakeholders in the audience, and allow a forum for the commissioners to interact a little more with staff, to ask questions of the folks who come in front of you. So I really appreciate the work that's being done on this from staff. Everyone's got busy workloads, and this is something to add to that, but we thought it was really important just to shine more of a light on the work that we are doing behind the scenes. So with that, I will hand it over to Ben Frizzell and Doug Andrews to get into their presentation.
Good morning, Ben and Doug. Introduce yourself and take it away. The video is yours.
I'm Doug Andrews. I am a location assessment supervisor in the planning and permitting unit.
And I believe Mr. Frizzell is having some audio issues, so we might need to ask the Commission's patience for just a few minutes to sort those out.
No problem.
While we have some silent airtime, I will take the opportunity to add to my earlier comments, just that we do have a plan for presentations like this, like I said, once a month at least, over the next year. But I'd love to hear if there are requests from commissioners about certain topics you'd like to hear on, and even members of the public who are listening. If there's a topic of interest to you, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is on the ECMC website.
Audio is still not working, Ben.
Hey, Lauren, quick question. Has there been a schedule of kind of potential presentations distributed to the commissioners?
Thank you, Chair Messner, or Commissioner Messner. No, there hasn't. I have that internally, but I haven't shared it with the commissioners yet. So I'd be happy to do that, and then I can take your requests and feedback based on that.
That'd be great.
And I believe Mr. Frizzell is leaving and rejoining, so hopefully he will be with us soon.
If it pleases the commission, I'd be glad to start the presentation while we wait for Ben to got to get his audio sorted out, and hopefully once he gets back in, he can join me.
Yeah, call an audible. Whatever works for you, Doug, would be great. If you can get it started, that'd be fantastic.
I will do that. Let's see. I guess I need to share my screen. Give me just a moment. Pardon me. I'm having some difficulties on my end as well.
Hey, Doug and
Yes,
or
Ben.
Commissioner Robbins, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I had to join via my phone, so we will work. We'll make that work. Let me go ahead and share my screen again.
And for what it's worth, we can see you and hear you, so it's all working now. Good job.
All right. Well, sorry for the difficulties. I think the commission knows how that goes, and we can work around. So, we'll go ahead and jump in. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Ben Frizzell, and I'm the Planning and Permitting Manager for the ECMC. And also here today to help with the presentation is Doug Andrews, one of our location assessment supervisors. We're here with you today to discuss our location assessment teams, or LAS, Location Assessment Specialists, Oil and Gas Development Plan, or OGDP review process, which is the review process prior to an OGDP application being recommended for your consideration. While the planning and permitting unit does have another work group, the permitting and completions team, we are going to focus solely on the location assessment team's OGDP review process since they are primarily responsible for ECMC's review prior to commission hearing of the application. We landed on this topic to help highlight and better illustrate how applications get to hearing with a recommendation of approval and the work that goes into the review process to help ensure those applications that come before you meet ECMC's stringent rules and regulations. I would like to note that the review process is not inclusive to just the LAS team. There are various additional ECMC units that touch the OGDP as it moves through the process, including our community liaisons, our cumulative impact specialists, engineers, the hearing unit, environmental unit, and our permitting and completions team. While I'll not be going into those specific tasks for this presentation, I did want to mention them and highlight the collaborative effort needed in order to get an OGDP to a place where it's heard by the commission. Here's a general overview of what we plan to cover today as it relates to our review process. We hope to highlight our complex review process, including internal coordination, multi-agency coordination, and adherence to all applicable rules and regulations being led and coordinated by our location assessment team. For each step in the process, we'll highlight the general work that goes into that step as well as any specific considerations. Please note that the director's recommendation will be called out specifically in coming slides, but does fall under the post-completeness process. Again, we hope that by going through the review steps, we take any mystery out of what is happening at a staff level and how and why staff recommend approval for those OGDPs that come before the commission. Here's a quick, simple representation or graphic of the process and what we will be discussing at a high level in the following slides. While the slides generally fall into these steps, we want to note it may not follow these one for one. So our work group function. As I previously mentioned, the main focus of our unit's LAS team is the review of OGDPs. An OGDP can consist of multiple locations, which each require their own 2A and plans and attachments, but may also just consist of a single location. The unit has been averaging about 50 to 60 OGDP reviews per year, which often take around 4 to 6 months to complete from submission to hearing. Our location assessment team is comprised of 3 supervisors, 3 senior team members, and 12 LAS team members. While the 12 LAS team members are the main reviewing team, our senior team members and supervisors assist with technical questions, help with processes, and coordinate with other ECMC units, external agencies, and local governments. While the quality of an OGDP submissions are dependent on the operator and their consultant, these applications are robust even for single locations OGDPs. As you can see in the slide, these applications typically consist of approximately 30-ish pages along with 50-ish plans and attachments associated with them. All of these need to be reviewed in accordance with our rules and cross-reference to help ensure consistency across plans, forms, and attachments. We'll get into a bit more of the specifics in later slides to help highlight our reviews, what they actually consist of. But I want to turn it over to Doug now to start with step one, our pre-application.
Thanks, Ben. The OGDP review process starts with a required pre-application meeting with the operator, ECMC, and other relevant stakeholders, which could include local governments or federal agencies. This is a space for the operator to go over their proposed location, hear potential concerns from various sources, and ask questions prior to submitting their official OGDP application. These meetings are a benefit to both staff and the operator, since specifics can be discussed, issues highlighted, and/or suggestions made to the operator on various issues and how to handle them. Additionally, for locations that may have special considerations, the right people can be invited so they are included right away in the process. This often includes a CPW and/or a CDPHE representative and other ECM staff members, including our cumulative impacts and community liaison representatives. The items outlined on this slide are typically what is discussed at each pre-application meeting. Once completed, we typically see OGDP applications submitted in the following couple of months, if not sooner. Ben?
Once an OGDP, along with all of its required forms, the 2A, 2B, and 2C, plans and attachments are submitted, the OGDP is assigned to an LAS team member. This officially kicks off the review process and is the main meat and potatoes of the LAS review. The LAS conduct an extensive technical review of the application, the plans and attachments in accordance with internal SOPs, provided ECMC operator guidance, and with the relevant rules and regulations. We work to have our review completed in 60 days, but this is dependent on the quality and complexity of the application. An OGDP with a single location versus an OGDP with multiple locations may take different amounts of time to review due to the amount of information required for the multi-location OGDP. During the LAS review, inconsistencies, rule compliance, and needed or missing information is documented in a spreadsheet. Once the review is complete, the spreadsheet is sent to the operator and the application pushed back to draft status in order for the corrections to be made by the operator. Again, this is their application. While we aim to have this done in a single review, realistically, this process does take a few iterations in order to get everything needed by the LAS team. In instances where the LAS team needs to work with the operator on one or more return to draft iterations, each time the OGDP is resubmitted, the new information must be re-reviewed in the same manner as all the other information and make sure the changes are consistent with the rest application with all ECMC applicable rules and regulations. Due to our extensive review process, no application will pass completeness that has not complied with all of ECMC's requirements. I would like to highlight this point. The passing of completeness and potential subsequent director's recommendation for approval, which we'll have more on in a little bit, mean that the OGDP application, after its review, has met all applicable requirements to be moved along in the process for now getting us to post-completeness, which Doug will go ahead and talk about next. Doug?
Once the OGDP has passed completeness, it is ready for a few important next steps. This is the time when both formal consultations happen, if required or warranted, with Colorado Parks and Wildlife or CDPHE. It's important to note that both CPW and CDPHE are always invited to the pre-application meetings hosted by ECMC and invited to pre-application meetings hosted by the local government, which would have allowed for potential issues to have been addressed prior to the formal consultation. However, this does not always mean everything is caught or something doesn't change from the pre-application meeting to this post-completeness consultation period. So this is a great time to review the application and make sure it complies with our sister agencies' requirements and/or needs. At this point, if additional information is needed due to one of these consultations, the operator's application can still be updated with these specific CPW and/or CDPHE requirements. Similar to the post-completeness consultation window opening, a public comment period is also open on the Form 2A. Having the public comment period after staff has reviewed the application ensures that the public are reviewing documents that are deemed complete and in compliance with our rules and regulations. This means any public comments received are related to an approvable application and not for something that would not have made it this far in the process. This is efficient and effective for both public comments and for ECMC staff to respond to those comments since the application has already gone through the technical review process. Staff reviews all public comments, and if there are any comments provided on the 2A that warrant further review of the application, staff will respond accordingly. In addition to the public comments on the 2A, public comments can also be made via our e-filing system. Commenting to the 2A is available only for a set period of time to allow both the applicant and staff to prepare a response document, which is added to the 2A and incorporated into the director's recommendation. While the LAS team tries to capture e-filings comments in the same manner, there needs to be a time cutoff so that the applicant and LAS staff can prepare response documents and the director's recommendation can be written and published. However, public comments can be made using e-filing system even after the official 2A comment period is over, but they may not be included in the director's recommendation or responded to by staff depending on when they were submitted. Once the post-completeness consultation and public comment window is closed, the director's recommendation is up next. The director's recommendation is the synopsis of the OGDP application. The LAS team works to write these in a manner that is objective, clear, and highlights potential areas the commission may want to review further. If an OGDP application has made it past the completeness/technical review stage and has complied with any formal consultation requirements, the director's recommendation is written with a recommendation for approval, since the application on an objective basis could be approved. The director's recommendation is not trying to influence the commissioner's own review and consideration of an OGDP application, but rather indicating that staff's review is complete and in staff's eyes, it meets ECM's rules and regulations, and it's an application that the commissioners could consider for approval. This is why OGDP applications that make it to the commission are almost always accompanied by a director's recommendation for approval. If an OGDP application had a rule violation, that application would not even make it through the completeness stage, and the violation would need to be fixed prior to moving the application forward. This is also true during the post-completeness and consultation stage. It allows another layer of review to be done, and if an item comes to our attention that would deem the application out of compliance with our rules and regulations, then we would not issue a director's recommendation and instead have the applicant address the issue before moving along. Ben?
The commission hearing is one of the final steps in the OGDP process and where the operator finds out if their application is approved, denied, or stayed. Obviously, I don't have to tell you about how this part of the process works, but it's important for our online audience to understand how the hearing ties into the work that's been done ahead of the hearing. The hearing is entirely independent of staff at this time, while still relying on staff's review, director's recommendation, and potentially requested information during the hearing. If an OGDP application is approved by the commissioners, then there are some administrative steps that are required by the LAS team prior to the formal final approval of the OGDP application. If the OGDP application is denied, the operator has the ability to resubmit at any point, starting this process over from the beginning. A stayed OGDP application typically means a decision may not have been made, additional information is needed, or another circumstance arose where a stay was needed. Occasionally during the hearing, the operator may commit to new and additional best management practices, or the commissioners may decide that a condition of approval needs to be applied to the application. When this is the case, LAS staff work with the operator, our assistant attorney general, and/or the hearings unit to ensure correct and agreed upon BMP or COA language is applied to the OGDP prior to it being formally final approved. I think it's important to note that the applicant bears the burden to provide and support their application, not only at the hearing, but throughout the application process. This can mean providing additional material, agreeing to specific terms or conditions, and providing commitments that help ensure staff and commissioners are comfortable moving forward with the location. Staff's role is to be an impartial reviewer across all applications. Once we have reached this point in the process, we generally consider the OGDP process to be completed. Now, Doug will briefly go over and touch on CAPs as they're a bit different than the OGDP process.
Yeah, as Ben mentioned, we want to briefly touch on comprehensive area plans, or CAPs, since those are a similar but separate process. CAPs are meant to be used for longer range planning for multiple OGDPs and locations within a specific geographic area. CAPs also have specific requirements for their review process, which may include various plans that encompass the area versus a single location. It's worth noting that even if a CAP is approved, OGDPs are still required to be submitted and reviewed following the above process that was described, and an approved CAP does not guarantee associated OGDPs will be approved. Ben?
So while this has been an extremely high level overview of our general process, there are obviously specifics that we are missing and/or specifics that have additional nuances that this presentation does not cover. However, even with those caveats, we hope that this shows the complexities and thoroughness of our OGDP review, the amount of material associated with each OGDP and each location, or the 2A, and why directors' recommendations recommend approval of an OGDP. I want to thank those individuals and staff that were not highlighted as part of this review process overview. It takes more than just the LAS team to review an OGDP, and I want to make sure that those individuals and units are also celebrated in their effort to help get OGDPs past completeness and to a point where they can be heard in front of the commission. I also wanted to express my sincere gratitude to the LAS team, the permitting and completions team, and for all those additional ECMC team members that support the OGDP review, as well as our sister agency representatives with CPW and CDPHE. Thank you again for all of your hard work on these. And with that, commissioners, we'd like to say thank you for your time, and we'd be here to answer any questions if you have any, and or provide any follow-up clarification if needed. So thank you.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Frizzell and Mr. Andrews. I think getting a glimpse into the background work of the staff is tremendously important for the commissioners, obviously, but for all of the folks that listen in. We try to acknowledge that work each and every time we take up an GDP, but that acknowledgement does not get into the breadth and depth of acknowledging the work that you guys do to bring these important pieces to us and to the table. So thank you very much for the overview. Commissioners, looking around, we've got some wonderful staff folks available for questions if folks have some. Mr. Messner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Frizzell and Mr. Andrews, for presenting and sharing kind of under the hood of what happens in the review process. I think it's really important for folks to understand the levels of review that happen prior to applications coming to hearing. I'm going to ask a couple of questions just to ask you to go a little further than on some of the areas. And so one of the areas is I wonder if you could talk a little bit further about how the application gets different department eyes on it internally as part of the technical review process, and what that looks like and how that's captured in the director's recommendation.
Sure, Doug, would that be a good one for you to take?
Sure, I'll be glad to. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Messner. During our completeness review, there are various plans and attachments that cover a wide multitude of things. An example of another unit where we would want to engage with another unit within the ECMC in reviewing that, I'll give for an example, the interim reclamation and topsoil plan. It's not unusual for us to reach out to the reclamation group folks to have a look at these plans and provide us with some feedback to them as part of our completeness review. Their concerns and issues are included on the completeness spreadsheet that I believe Glenn mentioned, that the then lead LAS will then follow up with the operator on and getting those addressed prior to the OGDP passing through completeness. So that's an example of another unit within the ECMC being involved in the review process.
And Doug, I would like to add a few other examples, but Commissioner Messer, our community liaisons, um, they are part of the process from the get-go, especially for those locations within a disproportionately impacted community. And they have specific tasks and separate reviews that they do as part of their jobs that ensure that their specialized knowledge is imparted into that OGDP application. Additionally, we have a cumulative impact specialist that can provide their expertise on various plans if needed. Our team goal is to be masters of none. And so that we can review maybe quote unquote easier locations, but also ensure that they comply with ECMC's rules and regulations. But for those locations that might have a little bit more complexities or have multiple locations in which we need a further deeper dive, we have that available to us as well. And they have a task that they will need to pass to make sure that they sign off on it. And additional to that, we have our hearings and our permit and completions team that make sure that the DSU or the spacing unit is correct. And so those minerals that are being developed are actually the ones being developed and they're not overlapping. So those are just some general examples to hopefully highlight the different units, even within the ECMC that are part of this and to go a little bit deeper into that. And again, if you have a more specific case, we're happy to answer that as well.
No, I think it's important to um, highlight, though, that it is actually not just an individual that's reviewing this, but rather that there's multiple departments that are reviewing this and providing input on it. And so I'm asking the questions so that we go a little further than perhaps your presentation did, because that level of review, what I would typically call a referral, an internal referral, is important. And different eyes on the application is important. And I do understand that that happens. But it's not always clear, I think, in reviewing applications to the public, perhaps, or to other applicants, that that's actually happening behind the scenes. And so that's why I'm asking the question, is to make sure that that's highlighted here. And I'll ask a couple other questions like that as well. So completeness determination is not necessarily a determination that the application is approvable, but rather that all the parts and pieces of the application are there in order to be able to review it, because the technical review process is the process in determining whether or not it's approvable or not. And that public comment period in that technical review ends up being really important, I think, to the public to be able to not only share their information for comment by the applicant or by staff, but rather to be able to potentially evolve the application through the technical review process. Is that how you see that public engagement occurring at the technical review?
Well, I want to highlight an important part. Completions and technical review are completed in one fell swoop by the LAS and ECMC to get to completeness. And those terms are intertwined, but are very different. A application that is complete has not been reviewed. And so those documents would, if we just went through only completion, they might not meet our rules. And so we wouldn't want to definitely present those. So when we combine our completeness process and technical review, we just term it past completeness. So I hope that kind of clears that part up. And what we mean by past completeness in the technical review is they have all the parts of the application, so it's a submittable application. With the technical review, staff has reviewed that and made sure that it can comply with all of our rules and regulations. That doesn't mean that it can then move it through the process. It doesn't mean it's a going to be approved. Doesn't mean it's going to do anything other than it meets the baseline compliance of ECMC. That's where the public comment period is then opened up. And at that point, that's really important because for public to be able to comment on an application, we want to make sure it's an application that has met those baselines, because if they're reviewing items, then it's a waste of time for them to review, try to call out saying this doesn't comply with ECMC rules, or this item is still missing. That's our job to try to get. And so we're trying to make sure that they have very clear plans and attachments. The information that they are able to review is what the applicant is proposing at that has gone through all of these reviews and is actually, kind of where they're going to the final stage of, yes, we want to move forward with it. It's not conceptual at that point. It's, yes, we are moving forward with this. So I think that's an important distinction I want to make sure that is there. And by having that review done post completeness, the public has all the information available to them to review, to add their comments, that we can still make changes at that level. I want to make sure that that's clear too. If there is something that is missed, which we're all human, but if there is something that is missed, we can go back and look at it. That application will not move forward. We can pull it back. We can hold on to it. We can do a lot of different items in our house to make sure that we get what is needed. And similar for our representatives and liaisons with CPW and CDPHE, if they find something that is amiss, or there's an item missing that is specific to their requirements, we can hold on to the application and make sure that the operator complies with those requirements, and before it's moved through. There, that is an important step, and that is that second layer of review that Doug spoke about in one of his slides. So I'm hopeful that answers your question a bit more, Commissioner Messner, but happy to elaborate as well.
Yeah, I think thanks for that. I think the important point there is that oftentimes we hear public comments happen after the director's recommendation has come out and prior to hearing, and certainly that's an opportunity to provide public comment and help shape an application. But there's also a previous step that I'm not sure all the public understands, that they can provide public comment during that technical review process that helps evolve that application as well, because it is moldable at that point based on input and referrals from a number of entities, whether that's the local government, whether that's CDPHE, CPW, or the community liaisons, or public comment. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was highlighted as another opportunity for public engagement that helps craft what ultimately comes before the commission prior to public comment happening at the commission hearing, right?
Absolutely. And we take all those comments, and like we've mentioned in the slides, those are reviewed, not just by us, but by the operator as well, and tried to and responded to in a way that shows that those are listened to, and that they maybe that comment just missed a plan. Maybe they just missed a portion, and try to respond and say that, oh yeah, that was taken care of, or actually, no, you're right, and we need to make this adjustment. So absolutely, those are both important pieces of public comment and how they affect the application.
Yeah, thanks for that. And to highlight again, in some upcoming applicable rules, especially with pre-application community meetings, and engagement in that pre-application process, that's another opportunity for the public to engage prior to an application even being submitted. And so how do you see that working into your process? Because I know that the timeline you laid out didn't include those, but they will be included if they're not already being included in upcoming reviews, right?
Pre-applications, from my understanding of that, are not one that are generally open to public at that point. It's a conceptual stage. It's making sure that they're not even, the operator's not even 100%. That is the location that is going to be used. It's a, as we went through the slide, it's a way for us to help the applicant with potential issues based on those locations. But are you meaning pre-application community meetings that might be more related to held by the operator? Okay, so again, we're like the semantics of all this. So a pre-application meeting that is required under 301 GF, G and F, are going to be different than a pre-application community meeting. those that are held by the operator for in those areas, those are wildly important. They get to hear what the community and the affected individuals want to have or not have, or what they deem important in their area or not, and they can make those adjustments as needed to the application to help offset any potential impacts that their operation may have. So those are incredibly important. And excuse me, sorry for going down a different path, and I think from what you're asking. So hopefully that better answers your question or highlights that portion of it, and why those are going to be and are important already.
And Commissioner Messner, if I may just add on to what Ben was saying, the pre-application community meetings, that's another example of one of the areas where the LAS team brings in another unit to give input on the application and how the rules are being followed. And in this case, it's the community liaisons, the community relations unit. And we'd be happy to have those folks come back and talk about those meetings and sort of how they're going and lessons learned. Perhaps in a little bit once we've had a few more. I think we've had about a dozen so far. So our liaisons are definitely getting some experience there, but I think that could be a valuable update further down the line to the commission if that would be something you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple other questions here. So one other kind of important stakeholder in the referral process of permitting is the relevant local governments and even the proximate local governments in some situations. Can you talk a little bit more about how you engage with the local governments and how they provide their perspective in the review process?
Absolutely, and I'll probably tag team this with Doug. So I'll kick us off though. All OGDPs are required to have a pre-application meeting, which is what I was referring to before. And so again, sorry for missing the question on that one. But all OGDPs are required to have a pre-application, and there's requirements to invite local and proximate government to those if they're held by ECMC, or for ECMC to attend those if presented or held by a local government, and in which we do. We have a great working relationship with Weld County, and we attend those meetings, and the locals have a huge amount of impact on what they're looking for in that example. And we try to provide value and try to provide ECMC specific questions and outline those requirements. So they're involved at the very beginning if they choose to be. There's oftentimes there might be they might make comments later on or ask for certain items, and I'll let Doug kind of go into those specifics. But I wanted to highlight that they're involved from the very beginning at every level that we possibly can, and that's from the conceptual stage of a pre-application and just meeting with everyone to make sure that we are moving forward. Additionally, a designee can also place comments directly on our forums as well. So with that, I just want to kind of highlight those two highlights and see if Doug, do you have any additional comments related to that question?
Well, thanks, Ben. Actually, no, I don't. I think you did a pretty good job of covering all the different ways and stages of the process that local governments interact with us in our OGTP process.
Great. Two other questions. One is, there's been some questions lately regarding how data is reviewed or verified on the 2B. Can you talk a little bit about the process you go through in reviewing that 2B and whether or not that is happening at your level, or whether that's the cumulative impacts team, or like who's got eyes on that to do that verification on the 2Bs?
Sure. Doug, do you want to take your first crack at that one, and then I'll follow up?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So yes, both the LAS staff and cumulative impacts unit members review the Form 2B and the information provided on that. So it's not just one set of eyes looking at that information. We have to keep in mind that much of the information on the Form 2B are estimates. They're not actual, numbers. So you have to keep that in mind. But there are more that it's those two units do review the Form 2B and the information provided on it.
Okay.
Ben, you have anything more?
And I would like to note that with the cumulative impacts rules that were that went into effect last December, there's still some learning that we're doing. There's still some coordination internally that we're doing to make sure that information that is provided is correct, accurate, and what we're looking to get on the 2B. And while we have no doubt that what has already been provided is accurate, we're still working through that, Commissioner Messner, and working together collaboratively with the cumulative impacts and the hand system practices unit to make sure that is moving in a direction that is fitting for both of us for that review, since both of us do have tasks on the 2B for review, and to make sure that data is generally accurate, and the estimates, which Doug noted, is correct as well. So just want to kind of highlight that too.
Sure.
And making sure there's consistency across, the 2B to the other forms and plans and everything. And I mean, that's generally what our cross-reference does as well in part of our review.
Great. Last question, and this is actually a question for me so that I better understand as I'm reviewing director's recommendations. I think Doug, or Mr. Andrews, you had mentioned that staff is reviewing applications objectively in determining how to make a recommendation in the director's recommendation, which most often is approvals. Many of our rules are subjective in that determination, or utilize judgment versus kind of check the box type of rule. Are staff looking at these subjectively and determining that, or are they looking at it from more of an objective lens? And I ask this only because that helps me better understand how to interpret the director's recommendation.
Commissioner Messner, thank you for that. I've my personal thoughts on this and how we've moved forward is with more of an objective criteria, because we can apply it consistently across applications, regardless of location, regardless of complexity. We try to make sure that consistent review is done to the best of our ability. And so by trying to utilize an objective criteria, we're really trying to focus on that. That may be through the use of our own guidance and our submitted guidance, showing what those plans an attachment should actually show and provide, as well as the rules, because sometimes our rules are less than clear on what actually should be consist in a plan, but the guidance takes that step further. So our team can use that guidance. We can use our rules and regs to make sure that it's there, and really try to apply it in a consistent manner, and then that objective manner. So that way we're trying to take any type of subjectivity out of our hands, and potentially allow the commission to take up some of those harder issues that might not be as clear. But by rule, the application does meet the baselines to be able to move forward, and would be considered in compliance with our rules, ECMC rules, to move forward in our process. So that's my take on it, and that's how I've generally spoken to the team about our reviews and what basically should be done on that one. So I hope that makes it a little bit clearer, and gives a why behind what we're looking at, and kind of maybe some of the resources used for that as well.
No, that's actually very helpful. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is like a lot of the judgment or subjectivity, you're asking us to do that as the commission, and you're looking at it from more of a objective lens as you're providing the director's recommendation and through guidance. And that doesn't mean that subjectivity is completely eliminated from it, right? But some of the more difficult subjective judgment decisions, you're asking the commission to really look harder at.
Correct, Commissioner Messner, and the reason is there's a a lot of reasons for the commission to look at the various components and various portions, noting that Commissioner Oath is the CDPHE representative, and Commissioner Ackerman has more of a wildlife, and for you, Commissioner Messner, a local government. And taking a look through those lens allows you to part those concerns and those issues specifically to the application and bring those up. Where ours, we want to make sure that we're consistent in our review and applying those that objectivity, even if there is a little subjectivity within our guidance or whatever. We want to make sure that we're trying to apply it consistently across all OGDPs. So that way our review across our 12 LAS members is the same. That's if we were to go in a subjective manner, that'd be really hard to make sure that everyone has the same subjective mindset throughout a team and review that many applications.
Right. Thanks for that. I want to just take a second to thank you guys for all of the work that you do. I've been involved with land use planning for many, many years now, and people don't understand what happens behind the scenes, the level of review, the time that it takes in order to be able to get these to hearing, and looking at all the different perspectives and bringing all that information together. And it's not always clear to everyone, and so I appreciate you taking the time today to let us look under the hood just a little bit and better understand the process that happens. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, Commissioner Messner, and we appreciate the ability, and we appreciate all the questions as well to help clarify for you, for the commission, and for everyone online. So thank you for those questions as well.
Commissioner Oath?
Thank you. And thank you very much for the presentation, and Commissioner Messner for all of those questions. Given all of the questions that you asked, I really only have a comment left. So thank you for that, which is that this was a very helpful presentation, I think, both for us as well as members of the public. I have been engaging in some meetings with a number of representatives from community organizations as well as individuals who had sent the commission a letter with some concerns and some thoughts. And one of the topics was an interest in better understanding what happens during this process by you all during this review process, right? What is the process, and particularly around some of the details around what level of review and verification goes into reviewing the information that is provided by operators on applications. And so I think this is incredibly valuable. So thank you for spending the time today. And would just say, I think, I know this is recorded, and because this has been of such interest, it's a comment that I'd love to see us share that with the folks who've been engaged in that process as well. So thanks again.
Commissioner Oath. Other commissioners with questions? Well, I'll tie a bow on it here. I practiced before the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, as we were formerly known, as a local government lawyer for 20 some odd years. And I represented numerous local governments before the commission. And I can say, I'll just testify to the fact that the process that you guys just worked our way through is 100,000% different than what it used to be. The level of transparency, the level of engagement with local governments, the level of engagement with our community liaisons, with stakeholders is phenomenal compared to where we were pre-181. And now I'm sitting on the other side, and I'm on the commission, and I'm watching and seeing how folks can interact with us. We've got the 511 hearings that we're doing. We've got the local government involvement. We're about to hear an OGDP in which the city of Aurora is going to testify. We listen to Brett Kavanaugh from Weld County on a weekly basis about things that are going on. The level of interaction between ECMC staff, the operator, impacted constituents, as well as the local government is phenomenally wonderful. We don't get everything right. We get a lot of stones cast at us for the things the decisions that we make. But Goodness gracious, we cannot not say that we do not create a transparent, open process for involvement. And a lot of that is attributed to the local government assessment team and to our staff and to our directors and our deputy directors for ensuring that everyone has a voice in the system. And having a voice in the system is tremendously important, whatever sorts of things you're doing. So I just want to thank you guys for elaborating on that, for giving us an opportunity to understand that, for giving us an opportunity to let our stakeholders hear that. It's tremendously important, and you guys are doing a tremendous job in making sure that that happens. So thank you very much for the update and for giving us or giving ECMC the opportunity to sort of explain that transparent process to the world. So thanks, really appreciate it.
Thank you, commissioners, and again, thanks to all of the LES team and planning and permitting unit, as well as all the other people that touch an OGDP, which is not just us. It really does take the ECMC to all of the ECMC to get an OGDP to you all, and that work needs to be highlighted as well. And I just want to reiterate that point as well. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, commissioners, and we will go ahead and log off. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Ben. I think our chair may have frozen, so appreciate it.
I thought so too.
I think we lost our chair, maybe had a bad connection there.
Commissioners, we are scheduled to take a 5-minute break before the next OGDP, so I suggest we do that. We'll get it ready, and hopefully Chair Robbins will be back online by then.
So 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Right.
All right, we are back. The Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission September 24th hearing. We are now taking up a couple of OGDP dockets. The first is docket 241100285, an oil and gas development plan. Bison as the operator. It is called the Friendly Skies OGDP, and we will start by recognizing Jeffrey Moore, the local government designee and manager of the Energy and Environment Division of the Planning and Business Development of the City of Aurora. Good morning, Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Chair Robbins and commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I am Jeffrey Moore, manager of the Energy and Environment Division for the City of Aurora. And we greatly value our relationship, as just been discussed this morning, with ECMC as a local government partner. Appreciate the opportunity to share our review this morning of this site. Just verifying you can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right, one slide here on some history. July of 2019, the City of Aurora signed an operator agreement with Axis Exploration, which approved the predecessor to this site called the ACP East. You can see it on the screen there in the red outline. It's south of the Friendly Skies current siting. In July of 2023, Axis applied for a modification to the operator agreement, which essentially removed the ACP East and shifted it to the current location, which is known as the Friendly Skies. That was unanimously approved by City Council. In consideration of two changes, one was the original location was partly in a floodplain, and Aurora Water had preferred that be removed or moved, and then also to be better in line with current and future surface owner development plans. So as of July 2023, the Friendly Skies well site, as it's cited today, was approved with up to 18 wells. There's a drilling deadline of July 31st, 2026, but the operator can apply for an extension on that. Fast forward to March of this year, and Axis requested an assignment of this operator agreement to Bison. Since Bison was a new operator in the City of Aurora, we engaged in a full review of their operations, all their wells and production in the state of Colorado, their bonding and financial assurance with the state, any reviews of notices of violation with ECMC or CDPHE were taken into consideration, review of their financials and their insurance. All those things checked out, and we recommended approval of the assignment. The city manager signed that in March of 2025, and Bison continues to be in full compliance with our operator agreement. Concerning the application itself for the Friendly Skies well site, but Bison began to reach out informally beginning of the year. We had a number of discussions with them. We appreciated their participation and looking to understand the rules and regulations in Aurora. March 27th, there was a pre-application meeting with Aurora. ECMC staff were invited and did attend, and we greatly appreciate that. The application was received as complete on July 31st, 2025. We completed our first review a few weeks later. At this stage, their virtual neighborhood meeting is scheduled for the site next Tuesday, September 30th. Once that's wrapped up, we expect that they will submit their next round of application review to respond to our initial comments sometime in October. And then at the end of that process, it will be an administrative decision, which will likely come sometime in early November. I will highlight the fact that there is no additional city council nor planning and zoning commission approvals of this project. The location is approved by city council, and the remainder is an administrative decision by the planning department. Our review has been extensive on the surface impacts. A lot of things here, I won't read all of these, but things that are important to us. Safety obviously is most important. Emergency response plan is required. Make sure that the insurance is in place and appropriate. Our risk manager looks at that in the city. Verify landowner authorizations, the neighborhood meeting. Air quality and groundwater quality monitoring are also very important. As I've said before, Aurora is unique somewhat in the metro area that we own the water rights underneath much of the city. And preserving the quality of the groundwater and the aquifers is very, very important to us here as a jurisdiction. And then, of course, looking at the traffic impacts, haul routes, the access road, and things of that nature. I'll highlight a few details here from our review. As I said, the current location with up to 18 wells has been approved by City Council since 2023. The zoning for this parcel is Airport District. In Aurora, that means industry hubs, commercial light manufacturing, distribution warehouses. There's a few of those in the area. Residential is not permitted in this zone district. In addition to the parcel where the well site sits, it is entirely surrounded by Airport District zoning as well. As a result, the closest current RBU is over 4,500 feet to the southwest. And I would also point out that there will be some additional RBUs that are built likely in the future a little slightly closer. But the closest RBU that could ever be built to this well site is 3,850 feet to the southwest. We know that Bison is planned for a pipeline route for both freshwater supply and hydrocarbon takeaway. We anticipate a separate application will be submitted by them sometime in the future. And just to reiterate, the remainder of the application will be processed soon. The end result is administrative decision. There's no further review by City Council nor the Planning and Zoning Commission. We greatly appreciate the excellent application that Bison has submitted and their willingness to answer our questions and work with us through the application process. It's been an excellent process so far. That's the end of my comments. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Just to note a former life of mine, I was the attorney for the city of Aurora for a number of years prior to becoming over here at ECMC, and I participated in and helped draft the operator agreement, although I wasn't around when it was finalized. I do not believe that creates a conflict and plan on continuing to adjudicate this matter, but just wanted to raise that for everyone's awareness to make sure no one had any concerns about that. I don't have any questions, but I just thoroughly appreciate the City of Aurora's presentation and participation with ECMC and this dual permitting approach, and think that that's a really good example of what we just talked about previously, which is the OGDP review process and the inclusion and transparency of local government participation with us. If anyone has questions about this, now is the time, and we also have Mr. Moore for questions as well. All right, seeing no further questions, you did a great job. Thank you so much, Mr. Moore, for being with us. Stick around, and we will now hear from the applicant, Ms. Wazalinki. Good morning, and glad that you're with us. And if you want to raise your witnesses, we can get them sworn in, and then we'll move to your presentation. presentation.
Great. Thank you, Chair. We have two witnesses today, and they are both here and on screen.
Mr. Boudreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask the two witnesses to be visualized. When I call your name, please raise your right hand, state your first and last name, and swear to tell the truth. We'll start with Katie Gillen.
My name is Katie Gillen, and I swear to tell the truth.
And Bennett Mayer.
My name is Bennett Meyer, and I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if we may, Chair, we've got a PowerPoint. We'll get that up, and then I'll get started.
That sounds great.
All right. Looks like that may not be in share mode or full presentation mode. It looks good. There's just a toolbar at the top.
Yeah, I see the toolbar at the top, although that's not really concerning. Otherwise, we can see the stuff pretty good.
Yep.
Okay.
Good deal.
Great. Let's proceed forward. Well, good morning, Commissioners. My name's Kelsey Wasolinki with Jost Energy Law, and with Jamie Jost, we represent Bison 4 Operating LLC in the Friendly Skies OGDP before you today in docket 2411-00285. We would like to thank the City of Aurora for its support of the OGDP and participation through the local permitting process, and Mr. Moore for his comments today, and also ECMC staff and the director for their efforts on this OGDP. Next slide. The Friendly Skies OGDP requests that the Commission approve an approximate 5,749.64 acre OGDP consisting of one new oil and gas location, the 747 pad, for the development of 18 new horizontal wells for the development of the Niobrara Formation. The OGDP also requests one new approximate 5,749.64 acre drilling and spacing unit for the development of 18 horizontal wells. The 747 location proposes approximately 18.24 acres of surface disturbance within the City of Aurora. As Mr. Moore just outlined, the siting for the 747 location was approved by the City of Aurora under the Axis Exploration Operating Agreement in 2023. Bison engaged in a pre-application consultation with the City of Aurora prior to filing the OGDP and submitted a site-specific development application to the city in July of 2025 and anticipates final approval of the site-specific application by the end of October or early November, as Mr. Moore reviewed with you. The 747 location triggers no Rule 304B2 ALA criteria and specifically is located more than 1 mile from all residences and is sited outside of HPH. Bison consulted with CDPHE and agrees to all 26 CDPHE recommended best management practices. A few noteworthy BMP commitments include Bison will connect to grid power for drilling. Bison will utilize engine setups for hydraulic fracturing with emission ratings of at least EPA Tier 4, final non-genset or equivalent. Bison will use renewable or grid power for all permanent powered production equipment on site, excluding external combustion sources. Bison will have adequate and committed pipeline takeaway capacity for all produced oil and gas. Bison will use Group 3 drilling fluid for all operations during the ozone season. Bison will install a sound wall for approximately 680 linear feet on the east edge of the well pad to reduce noise levels in the area. And Bison will complete construction, drilling, and completions at the 747 location in a single occupation and before planned occupancy for a housing development that's currently in the planning and permitting stages and located approximately 3,945 feet to the southwest of the proposed location. The director recommendation for approval of this OGDP notes that the site-specific BMPs, if successfully implemented, should minimize and/or mitigate the potential for adverse impacts to public health, safety, and welfare. And finally, Bison has complied with all notice requirements for the Friendly Skies OGDP, no formal petitions were filed, and no public comments were received on the Form 2A. I'll now turn it over to Katie Gillen to continue the presentation.
Thanks, Kelsey. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and we thank you for your time and attention to hear our application. I would like to start by introducing myself for the record. My name is Katie Gillen. I am the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and EHS at Bison. I am here to provide you with an overview of our oil and gas development plan for the Friendly Skies and to answer any questions you may have to the best of my ability. Also present with me today is Bennett Meyer, Senior Director of Land at Bison. Next slide. The Friendly Skies contains a single location, the 747 pad. The local government siting for the location was approved by Aurora City Council on July 24th of 2023 under the Access Exploration LLC operating agreement under the pad name Deuce. The approved operating agreement was transferred to Bison on March 6th of 2025. While the local government siting disposition for the location is approved, the City of Aurora held a pre-application meeting for the location on May 27th of 2025 to discuss the oil and gas permit, which will be administratively reviewed and approved. During the pre-application meeting, ECMC expressed no opposition to the proposed location. CPW and CDPHE were both notified but did not participate. Bison submitted our site-specific oil and gas permit to the City of Aurora on July 16th, 2025, which was subsequently deemed complete on July 31st and is under our second review. Our neighborhood meeting is scheduled for September 30th. Bison received completeness determination of the OGDP on May 20th of 2025. And the director's recommendation for approval of the OGDP on March 19th. The CDPHE consultation pursuant to Rule 309F was not required. However, CDPHE requested a consultation as the location is sited within a disproportionately impacted community. That consultation was completed on June 2nd, 2025. CDPHE consultation pursuant to Rule 309E was not required and CPW did not request consultation. There was no public comment received on the OGDP application. Next slide. Bison acquired the Access Exploration LLC operating agreement from Civitas Resources, Inc. on February 1st, 2025. The siting disposition was approved under the Access Operating Agreement under the pad name Deuce, depicted on this slide in Exhibit A of the Access Operating Agreement. As per the terms of this agreement, drilling needs to commence by July 31st of 2026. The city is supportive of accelerated development and the beneficial impacts of the offset well remediation associated with the project. Next slide. The location siting approval for the 747 well site was granted under the operating agreement, as has been previously discussed. This process flow shows the City of Aurora's administrative approval process, which we anticipate will be a 13-week review timeline with anticipated approval at the end of October or early November. Next slide. The mineral lands that will be developed under this OGDP include a single drilling spacing unit covering approximately 5,749.64 acres of mineral lands that will be developed from a single surface location, the 747 pad. There are 18 total horizontal wells planned for development. In Township 3 South, Range 65 West, in sections 7, 12, 11, and portions of sections 6, 1, 2, 3, and 10, Bison will drill 11 3.5 mile lateral wells drilled east to west. In Township 3 South, Range 66 West, in sections 8, 9, 10, and portions of 5 and 4, Bison will drill 2 1.5 mile lateral wells drilled west to east and 5 3-mile lateral wells drilled west to east. Next slide. The 747 pad is located approximately 3 miles south of Denver International Airport in the airport district of the city of Aurora in an area zoned commercial. We have included a map depicting cultural features under Rule 304B2 to show that Bison cited this location to best avoid impacts to all sensitive criteria, which are all over a mile away from the location. The nearest high priority habitat is over 2,300 feet away from the location to the north. The proposed location is sited in non-irrigated cropland with predominantly adjacent industrial and commercial uses. The building unit depicted in this map on the slide to the east of the location is the Kroger Fulfillment and Distribution Center, predominantly operated by robotics. No alternative location criteria apply to this location. And while the location is within a mapped disproportionately impacted community, the nearest residential building unit, high occupancy building unit, or school are all over a mile away from the location. Additionally, the zoning prohibits residential development. Next slide. Bison evaluated and considered key cultural and environmental features to avoid, minimize, and mitigate impacts when selecting the 747 surface location and access road. As such, none of the Rule 304B alternative location siting analysis criteria apply, and no alternative siting analysis is required. There are no residential building units, high occupancy building units, schools, or child care facilities within 2,000 feet of the 747 location. It is located in a zoned airport district with surrounding industrial and commercial land use. This location has approved local government siting, and the development application is currently in process. From this location, Bison is able to develop 5,749.64 acres with 18 wells and just 7.04 acres of long-term surface disturbance. Next slide. During the construction phase, there will be 18.24 acres of surface disturbance. Once interim reclaimed, the pad will be 7.04 acres. Access will be off Jackson Gap Road, and Bison has an executed surface use agreement with the surface owner. At the production facility, there will be 18 horizontal wells, 11 3.5-mile lateral wells, 5 3-mile lateral wells, and 2 1.5-mile lateral wells. The location will be connected to oil and gas pipeline. Produced water will be trucked from the location as the nearest produced water pipeline in the area is 24 miles away from the location. The production facility and compression will be connected to utility line power. The facility will be designed with a tank light design, no oil tanks, but there will be 4 produced water tanks. Next slide. Bison intends to commence drilling and completions in Q4 of 2025, pending permit approval, and intends to expedite development to minimize overlapping construction in the area and finish all drilling and completion phases before the projected occupation of the housing development located 3,945 feet to the southwest of the site. Bison also intends to develop the entire DSU in a single occupation. Next slide. During the drilling and completions phase, Bison will implement the following best management practices on this slide, and to highlight a few, Bison will connect to grid power for drilling and has paid for the electrical infrastructure to support drilling and would only utilize Tier 4 or equivalent drilling engines if power is unavailable. For drilling operations that occur during ozone season, Bison will use Group 3 drilling fluid. For completions, engines will be Tier 4 and fully compliant with Air Quality Control Commission Regulation number 7. Bison is over compliant by 42% under the mandated NOx intensity requirements. Fresh water will be delivered via a lay flat line and stored on site in an MLBT. Quiet frac fleet will be employed, reducing noise during completions. Next slide. Bison will implement the following best management practices listed on this slide during the production phase. And to highlight a few, we will flow back wells directly to the production facility, eliminating additional flowback storage equipment and capturing and controlling flowback emissions. Bison will utilize a LACT system. A tank light design will be implemented with only produced water stored in atmospheric storage tanks. The facility will be connected to line power and compression will be electrified. Next slide. Produced water will be trucked from the location. It is not practicable to connect to a produced water pipeline due to the significant distance, operational challenges, and adverse impacts when compared to trucking. The nearest disposal well is 22 to 24 miles away. Given the significant length of pipeline required, approximately 24 miles or more if the direct right-of-way cannot be obtained, the emission reduction benefits that a pipeline might otherwise offer are likely to be offset by the emissions and impacts associated with its construction. Construction of a 24-mile pipeline would generate significant traffic and emissions over the 6-month build period, offsetting most of the emission savings from reduced trucking. Bison's produced water tanks will be equipped with a vapor capture design controlling 100% of tank emissions during operation. Tank emissions are already expected to be minimal and will rapidly decline within 3 to 6 months of first production. Securing approximately 24 miles of right-of-way would likely take 1 to 2 years, with additional 6 months required for construction. By then, the term of the access operating agreement would have expired. In consultation with CDPHE, Bison was encouraged to complete drilling and completions prior to the nearby residential development located 3,950 feet to the southwest, becoming occupied. This was specifically recognized as a benefit in reducing overall development impacts. The pipeline right-of-way would run through disproportionately impacted communities, residential areas, and 22 acres of high-priority habitat and other sensitive land uses. Finally, forecasted produced water volumes show rapid and steep decline. During the flowback phase, Bison anticipates an average of 24 truck trips, rapidly declining to an average of 4 truck trips per day during the production phase over the life of the wells. Given the adverse impacts associated with the 24 miles of pipeline that would be required, a pipeline is not justified for this location. Next slide. The surface location and access road are sited wholly outside of high priority habitat. CPW was invited to the pre-application meeting on March 27th of 2024, but did not attend as the location is not within high priority habitat. Sited in an airport district with heavy commercial and industrial activity, the area is not suitable for habitat. Bison has agreed to complete a migratory bird survey prior to construction. And to list a few of our best management practices for wildlife, Bison has agreed to implement a quiet frac fleet to reduce noise and oil and gas pipeline to reduce trucking associated with oil production. Next slide. Bison completed a consultation with CDPHE on June 2nd of 2025. CDPHE requested consultation as the location is within a disproportionately impacted community. However, they acknowledge that there are no residential building units, high occupancy building units, schools, or childcare facilities. Additionally, the zoning does restrict residential development. Additionally, they acknowledge that the location is zoned for commercial and industrial land uses. During the consultation, the future residential plan that was approved and has been discussed, the development that is occurring 3,945 feet to the southeast, has a projected issuance of certificate of occupation in the summer of 2027. Pending all permit approval, Bison plans to construct, drill, and complete all wells on the 747 prior to the projected certificate of occupancy in 2027. Finally, Bison has agreed to the 26 best management practices listed in the CDPHE consultation and attached to the 2A. Next slide. In conclusion, the OGDP was submitted on November 19th of 2024. There was no opposing public comment received on the application. Local government siting disposition has been approved by the City of Aurora, and Bison anticipates administrative approval of the oil and gas facility permit by the end of October, early November. The director's recommendation and staff have concluded that no alternative location criteria apply, and that impacts to public health, safety, and welfare will largely be avoided, minimized, and mitigated by the successful implementation of Bison's site-specific BMPs in this application. Bison has committed to several BMPs to minimize and mitigate impacts from emissions, including electrifying the production facility and utilizing Group 3 drilling mud during ozone season. Bison has also committed to a 32-foot sound wall, along with the 26 best management practices listed in the CDPHE consultation. Next slide. And finally, this slide includes our requested relief, and we are now open for questions.
Ms. Wasilewski, any final thoughts?
None for me. Thank you, Ms. Gillen. And yep, we've got our PowerPoint down. We're open for any questions.
Thank you very much. I just want to recognize that the commission, or at least I, as a commissioner, appreciates the work with the City of Aurora on this. That's really important for our deliberative process. Commissioners, the panel is open for questions. Commissioner Messner.
Thank you for the presentation and the information. Just a quick question. Really appreciate the commitment to electrification of the drill rig, the Group 3 drilling fluids, electrification of production equipment. I think that was a recent evolution of the application. And so just wondering whether or not you've had an opportunity to update the emissions profile on the Form 2B with the new commitments. Because at least when I read the director's recommendation, I'm not sure that some of those commitments had been made yet. And so just wanted to check.
Thanks, Commissioner Messner. In response, the Form 2B would be the most conservative, as it includes the gas-driven drilling. So it would be the most conservative approach. And so if we were to update the Form 2B, those emissions would be reduced.
Yeah, I agree. But I do think we need accurate information on the Form 2B because it's utilized to determine cumulative impacts and a lot of other things in our process. And so all I would ask is, because it is better, right? That's a good thing, that get updated, and perhaps a condition of approval that it get updated at some point, so that we do have the accurate data on the Form 2B for our purposes. But again, I appreciate your commitment to the better emissions profiles. Yeah.
And Bison is happy to work with staff to update as needed.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions from the commission to the panel? Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I think this was very good work here. Really appreciate the significant coordination, as the chair said, with Aurora and the detailed and significant work that went into the application. I just have one question, and thank you for adding additional detail associated with the produced water trucking and some of the reasons that the pipeline wasn't warranted. And I would agree. I think that's accurate that when just looking at one OGDP, a produced water pipeline rarely is worth the effort with regard to ecological impacts. That said, there is kind of a critical mass here where they do become effective if there is significant development in the area. And so I just wanted to ask if Bison is kind of planning, looking outward in this area, and is there potential for significant future development that would really reach that tipping point where a produced water pipeline would be necessary, in which the planning efforts that are difficult that you mentioned would become warranted from an ecological standpoint and emission standpoint?
Thanks for that question. Yes, and that is another reason that the pipeline is not justified, is that Bison has no future development plans or positions in this area.
Thank you, and I appreciate that response. And I do think and hope that operators, as they look at these, are looking at them on wider than an OGDP by OGDP basis, and considering opportunities for caps, in which case major planning such as produced water pipeline takeaways can be important components of those caps. So thank you very much for the response there.
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman. Great point. Other commissioners with questions? All right. Seeing no further questions, we move to the deliberation stage. Does any commissioner desire to initiate deliberations and/or care to make a motion? Commissioner Messner.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion, but just to give a couple of thoughts. Appreciate the coordination with the local government. That was extensive. The local government process was significant. I really appreciate the addition of, particularly because it's in a disproportionately impacted community, the commitment to electrifying the drilling, the permanent production facility, the Group 3 drilling fluids. And so I think the siting of this is good, particularly because it's away from most, if not all, sensitive receptors. And so would be willing to make a motion of approval of the application with the condition of approval that within 14 days after approval of the OGDP, the operator will submit updated cumulative impacts information for the Form 2B. The updated information will reflect the planned use of grid power for drilling and production equipment and Group 3 drilling fluids. And if they could just transmit that information to staff for the updates.
That's a motion. Ms. Wozniacki, is the client okay with that?
Yes, thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there further deliberation on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Again, with looking back to the discussion that we had with staff about the work that goes into getting these things to us. We express our appreciation to staff and to the applicant for working hard to bring to us an approvable OGDP. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we have one other OGDP before us. It is 10:30, or it's, I don't know what time it is. I'm not in Colorado. Let's take 5 minutes. We'll come back in 5 minutes. Thanks. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the Energy and Carbon Management Commission meeting. It's Wednesday, September 24th, and we're going to take up the next OGDP. That's docket 241-200-309, an oil and gas development plan, Anschutz Exploration Corporation. Mr. Brichella, you're recognized.
Great, thank you very much.
If you want to elevate your witnesses, we'll go ahead and get them sworn in to get this thing started.
Just reviewing, it looks like everybody's on. So we're looking for Holly Hill, Laura Johnson, Whitney Lott, Taylor Levin, and Jason Ekman.
Mr. Boudreau, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify before we get started, Mr. Priscialla, Holly Hill is an attorney, correct?
Holly is not an attorney.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't have her on the panelist for questions list. Okay, I'll ask each of the witnesses to be visualized. I'll call your name. Please raise your hand. State your first and last name and swear to tell the truth. Holly Hill.
Holly Hill, I swear to tell the truth.
Laura Johnson. You're muted.
Yep. Laura Johnson, I swear to tell the truth.
Whitney Lott.
I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you. Jason Ekman.
Jason Ekman, I swear to tell the truth.
Taylor Levin.
Taylor Levin, I swear to tell the truth.
Did I get everyone, Mr. Priscialla?
You did. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Priscilla, you can take it away.
Great. Well, thank you. Good morning, Chair Robbins. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Joe Priscilla. I'm a shareholder with Wellborn, Sullivan, Meck, and Tooley, and I'm appearing on behalf of the Anschutz Exploration Corporation. I am pleased to present Anschutz's BHR J22-397 pad expansion oil and gas development plan application here today. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Director Murphy and all of ECMC staff for all of their hard work on this application. And as you all heard earlier this morning from Mr. Frizzell and Mr. Andrews, there is a ton of work that goes into these OGDPs. And I just want to reiterate that we greatly appreciate staff's professionalism and their thoroughness on working with us on getting our applications ready to present to you here today. With me today and presenting for Anschutz is Holly Hill, Fielding Hill. She is a regulatory consultant for Anschutz. And then available for Commissioner questions are Laura Johnson, Subsurface Manager, Whitney Lott, Senior Landman, Taylor Levin, Senior Operations Engineer, and Jason Ekman, Regulatory Lead. The application requests that the Commission approve an oil and gas development plan covering approximately 2,920 acres that includes the following lands in Township 3 North, Range 97 West, in Rio Blanco County, and covers all of sections 22, 27, and 34. Southwest of section 23, and the west half of sections 26 and 35. Holly, if you could just go to the next slide, please. And one more. Thank you. The application requests that the Commission approve a Form 2A for the expansion. Let's go back. There we are. For the expansion of the BHR J22-397 pad, which is an existing active oil and gas location. There is one horizontal well on the location that is producing oil and gas from the Niobrara Formation, and Anschutz is requesting the Commission approve an additional 6 horizontal wells for a total of 7 horizontal wells on that pad. Pad is sited within the mineral development area, and it's wholly within an existing federal unit, the Wiley Federal Unit. There is no spacing application associated with this OGDP because the development program will be subject to that Wiley Federal Unit agreement. That means that all wells drilled within the OGDP area will be subject to the Bureau of Land Management's paying well determination. That is, if the wells are deemed paying, the wells become subject to the Wiley Federal Unit Agreement and BLM regulations. If the well is non-paying, Anschutz will then apply to the commission for a spacing unit for any such well. With respect to leasehold and permits, Anschutz has a combination of both federal and fee leases that cover the application lands. Anschutz has obtained its drilling permits from the BLM for the 6 proposed wells. As to the location itself, it's on fee rangeland surface, and it is subject to a surface use agreement. There's also a wildlife conservation agreement on these lands. Anschutz has worked closely with Colorado Parks and Wildlife regarding the location. It is subject to Rule 304 B2B, Romanet 8, as it is located within mapped high priority habitat for sage grouse, aquatic native species waters, elk severe winter concentration area, and mule deer winter concentration as well. In its collaboration with CPW, we've obtained CPW support for the expansion of the BHR J22397 pad. It has been determined to be the best suited alternative for the avoidance, minimization, and mitigation of impacts to wildlife resources. Anschutz has agreed to avoid all construction, drilling, and completion operations during the applicable wildlife timing stipulations. Anschutz is providing CPW with direct and indirect compensatory mitigation fees, and it has obtained confirmation with CPW that the water resource that triggered the Rule 1202C1R for aquatic native species conservation is an ephemeral drainage that is not suitable to support any protected aquatic species. CPW did determine, however, that from a procedural standpoint, it could not provide the waiver to Rule 1202C1R, such that Anschutz was required to and did perform an alternative location analysis. The ALA evaluated 3 alternative locations, all of which also are located in high priority habitats, and all would require entirely new surface disturbance, new access roads, and new pipeline infrastructure. Thus, Anschutz has determined that, and with the agreement of CPW, that this existing pad is the best of the alternatives. The Commission's standard of review today would be under Rule 301A, and that is whether the proposed operations will protect and minimize adverse impacts to public health, safety, and welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources, and protect against adverse environmental impacts on any air, water, soil, or biological resource. As you'll hear today, Anschutz evaluated this project with the primary goal of avoiding impacts and thereafter minimizing and mitigating any unavoidable impacts. You'll hear that consistent with Rule 603E, Anschutz is proposing to use an existing location to avoid and minimize new disturbance impacts to the environment and wildlife resources. There are no RBUs or other human receptors within 2,000 feet of the location, thereby avoiding impacts to the public. There's an existing access road, avoiding new road construction. They will utilize existing gas and produced water pipeline infrastructure, thereby avoiding new infrastructure installation and associated traffic impacts. And Anschutz has committed to deploying a suite of best management practices for the protection of groundwater, including berms, diversion ditches, secondary containment, and a liner for completion operations. And these are just some of the best management practices and commitments that Anschutz will employ to avoid, protect, minimize, and mitigate adverse impacts to public health, safety, welfare, and the environment and wildlife resources. Rio Blanco County is the relevant local government, which does not have oil and gas siting regulations. That said, Anschutz will be submitting for a county permit prior to construction of the location. There are no proximate local governments. As part of this OGDP, Anschutz is seeking commission approval of 2 variances. First, a variance to the interim reclamation timing requirements under Rule 1003B, and this is due to the high priority habitat wildlife timing stipulations that preclude Anschutz from operating for a good portion of the year. So there's only a small window of opportunity to conduct construction, drilling, and completion. And without that variance, Anschutz would be required to perform essentially cyclical interim reclamation in those same operational windows that would substantially extend the total life cycle of the operations and require a cycle of redisturbance of that interim reclamation area. So The variance will really shorten both the overall development timeline and further minimize impacts that would otherwise be associated with multiple rounds of interim reclamation, including minimization of topsoil loss. ECMC staff and CPW support this variance. As part of this variance, Anschutz has agreed to remit an additional reclamation bond. The second variance is to allow the pad expansion within mapped aquatic native species conservation waters under Rule 1202C1R. As I mentioned earlier, the mapped layer has been determined to be an ephemeral drainage. Anschutz did hire an engineering environmental consultant to map the area. They determined that it's ephemeral. There is no ordinary high water mark, and it's not capable of supporting aquatic species. And after consulting with CPW, CPW's evaluation, and CPW did provide a letter of support. In that letter stating that, quote, "It is clear that Open Gulch is extremely ephemeral in nature and does not possess the characteristics necessary to support native fish species during any stage of their life cycle," close quote. CPW did request that Anschutz employ certain BMPs for the prevention of stormwater runoff and impacts to aquatic habitats in the area, all of which Anschutz has agreed to do. Thus, the Rule 1003B and Rule 1202C1R variance requests and supporting materials, those were all submitted with the OGDP application as Exhibits C and D. As far as notice, Anschutz has given proper notice pursuant to Rule 504A and 303E1. No petitions or protests have been received. And on September 10th, 2025, the director's recommendation issued and did recommend conditional approval of the BHR J22 397 OGDP, including approval of the two variance requests, subject, however, to two conditions of approval that are found on pages 6 and 7 of the director's recommendation, which Anschutz does agree to. And with that, we respectfully request that the commission adopt the director's recommendation, approve the BHR J22 397 expansion pad OGDP, and the associated variance requests. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I pass this presentation to Ms. Holly Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pershala. Ms. Hill, please take it away.
Sorry for that. Thank you, Mr. Pershala. And I would like to echo sentiments already provided to staff. These are very cumbersome permits. They're very involved, and we really appreciate the time that goes into reviewing these. I'd like to provide you a little history of the BHR J22 location as we are requesting that variance for the 1202C1. So this location was built prior to the mission change rules. So I'm just going to briefly walk through the history of this. So in 2012, Endeavor permitted the Wiley 23 397-2. This location was never built and the assets were transferred to Augustus. In January of 2015, CPW did consult on this location with Augustus, and in January 2017, a new Form 2A was submitted. In October of 2017, the BHR J2215-397-2RH was completed as an open hole pilot and was later plugged back. In December of 2017, a Form 2A was submitted to expand the footprint of the well pad and to accommodate another horizontal well, the J22-397-4RH. In April of 2018, the BHR J2215-397-2RH was sidetracked as a horizontal Niobrara well. This well is still producing. In December of 2019, the BHR J22-397-4H Form 2 expired. That is still in an expiration status. And in May of 2020, Anschutz acquired the location and the wells from Augustus. And then in January 15th of 2021, the mission change rules went into effect. Per Rule 603E, Anschutz is utilizing this existing well pad to drill and develop 6 additional wells, and this further reduces surface impacts to wildlife in the area. Here's a brief snapshot of the OGDP timeline. The on-site visit for this location and expansion occurred in October of 2024 with BLM and CPW. Subsequently, the relevant local government was notified and a pre-application meeting occurred with CDPHE, BLM, and ECMC. On December 12th, the BHR J22-397 OGDP was submitted, and shortly thereafter, the BLM APDs were submitted to the White River Field Office BLM in January 15th of 2025. The first completeness review occurred in February of 2025, and a second completeness review occurred in June of 2025. Finally, the BLM APDs were approved July 15th of this year as a categorical exclusion in a NEPA assessment. Sorry, I think this is hitting into the screen. ALA triggers, as mentioned, this location falls within high priority habitat. It falls within the Rule 1202C aquatic native species conservation waters and Rule 1202D elk and mule deer, as well as sage grouse. The alternative location analysis for this location represents on this map. You're going to see the fingers of the aquatic native species mapping layer. As you can see, the blue location, which is the BHR J22-397, is situated in that aquatic native species waters, as well as the alternative location number 2. None of the locations assessed fall into a disproportionately impacted community. However, alternative location number 1 would have been approximately 800 feet closer to that boundary. All of these locations fall into high priority habitat. None of the locations are in proximity to RBUs, BUs, childcare centers, or school facilities. All of the locations would either would require a waiver or a variance from or a variance for reclamation. And the new surface disturbance required for locations 1, 2, and 3 would have ended up with 10 plus acres for a new access road, a new pipeline, and a new well pad. In this instance, Anschutz is going to expand the existing well pad to accommodate those 6 new wells and provide road upgrades to the access road for safety, eventuating into 5.711 acres. Here's a zoom in of the high priority habitat that this location falls into. Again, there's that aquatic native species conservation waters that was mapped. When Anschutz had a third party go out and conduct a sensitive area determination, it was determined that this area cannot support the species and is unlikely to in the future. Again, it does fall into elk, mule deer, and greater sage grouse. And as such, AEC has agreed to the wildlife timing stipulations for big game from December 1st to April 30th, and the greater sage grouse from March 1st to July 15th, meaning no construction, drilling completions, or interim reclamation will occur in these time periods. There is a conservation easement over the area that is funded by CPW and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. It also allows for the expansion of this existing well pad as that was contemplated in the agreement. Anschutz agrees to provide compensatory mitigations to CPW for $65,111.80 for direct and indirect impacts. And here's a snapshot of truck traffic, as we know that might become a question. Estimates here are deliberately conservative. Noting here again, gas and produced water will be transported off location via existing pipelines. And we wanted to note here that the production phase accounts for truck traffic required for inspections for stormwater, AVO, safety monitoring, and oil hauling. There's a snapshot here of Anschutz's best management practices. We've bolded some of the ones that we think are very compelling. Once again, construction, drilling and completions, and interim reclamation will not occur within those wildlife timing stipulations. Gas and water are piped off. The location will be monitored daily during drilling and completions. Exhaust mufflers will be installed on engines, as well as sound mitigation for the compressors to protect wildlife. These wells will be monitored remotely for shut-in capabilities. And I will now turn the presentation back over to Mr. Prashala.
Great, thank you, Ms. Hill. And with that, I would just like to close up that we request that the commission find that this application complies with the Conservation Act and satisfies the commission's rules for approval, that the proposed operations and expansion of the BHRJ 22397 pad to accommodate the additional 6 horizontal wells does satisfy Rule 301A, and find that the Rule 1003B variance request satisfies Rule 502C, find that the Rule 1202C1R variance request satisfies Rule 502C, and that based on those findings, we respectfully request that the commission approve this OGDP application and the associated variances. Thank you very much, and we look forward to your questions.
Very good. Thank you for the presentation. My Zoom link died out, but now I'm back. So I think we have a panel that is open for questions from the commission. Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate your extensive work with CPW and consultation. I do have a question about the 4 occupations. Really, we're talking about 3 occupations and then interim reclamation. You're talking about an occupation. So as far as construction and drilling is concerned, you're talking about 3 separate occupations. And I didn't really see any anywhere in the documents or in the presentation other than there's a limited window, obviously with the timing restrictions, that really only gives you a 4.5-month operating window. And I certainly have seen 6 wells constructed and drilled in that time period, in a 4.5-month time period. So I'm interested to understand why you're not able to go ahead and put all 6 wells in during that 4.5 months and required 2 more occupations to do that.
Sure, I can answer that question, Commissioner Ackerman, and then potentially my colleague Taylor Levon can fill in some of the gaps. We planned these locations out of an abundance of caution for drilling the oil wells at approximately 17 days per well, and completions taking about 17 days as well. Anschutz continues to make efforts and efficiencies, and I think those days could be reduced as they drill in this area. Again, we just created this schedule out of an abundance of caution in the event there were any issues, and we're hoping that this wouldn't be the schedule. But Taylor, feel free to, or we were hoping that the schedule for drilling and completing those wells wouldn't take 17 days each.
Yeah, that's correct, Holly. Just to add on to that as well is, we've only done a handful of wells in this region, so we're still learning where our capabilities are. As Holly mentioned, this is a little conservative, but we are already seeing some improvements in drilling. We just need to continue to see where those go. So as those improve, we hope to see some improvement in our efficiencies and drop those times down.
Thank you. And I'm trying to do math fast in my head here, which is dangerous. But even if you do take 17 days with a period for construction, I'd have to get my abacus out. But I think we're, pretty close to that 4.5-month time period there. And so I understand that that's the issue. I can see even maybe consideration for a second occupation, but a third occupation for drilling seems excessive. I think, my concerns would be allayed if we could talk about a COA that talked about best efforts to complete in 1 occupation and no more than 2 occupations as far as construction and drilling. I really do think that 3 occupations, given the number of wells being drilled, even with the limited time frame, is excessive. And I want to recognize that CPW reviewed the plan as proposed and offered their approval and didn't have any other outstanding issues and concerns. And I do put some weight to that. I do think technologically, if you're able to do it much faster, it seems reasonable to do so and minimize the impact on wildlife by 1 entire occupation. Wanted to get your feedback on how you feel about that approach.
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman. I'll start off responding to that and then lean into either Mr. Pershala or Mr. Levon. We're anticipating roughly 30 days for that well pad expansion and the upgrades to the access road for rig safety. And typically, Anschutz does commence an open hole pilot well on the first well they drill. That's where they conduct logging. That does take a significant amount of time on that first well. And that provides them data that they later evaluate on how to approach wells in the area and the additional wells on that pad. So they're making real-time decisions on the next wells on that pad, which may require sundries. So again, we really built that schedule to accommodate for the exploratory nature of this. Mr. Levon, Mr. Pershala.
Yeah, that's correct, Holly. I don't necessarily have anything to add to that.
Yeah, and I would just thank you very much, Ms. Hill, for giving that explanation. I think the exploratory nature is something that is important here. This isn't DJ drilling where the reservoir has been completely determined and everyone understands what they're getting into, what the results are going to be, what the drilling timeframes are going to be. I mean, it is a different animal out here, and as you can see from the planned operations is that Anschutz is taking very seriously the wildlife implications of its operations and is committed 100% to avoiding the timing stipulations. There's not been a request to pay compensatory mitigation to even operate within those windows. We're respecting the windows and staying out of it. And obviously, from a business standpoint, to the extent that you can accelerate your operations and drill faster, complete faster, and get in and get out, that's a cost savings to Anschutz. And as Ms. Hill explained, that this is a conservative estimate. To the extent that Anschutz could accelerate their operations, they certainly would do that from a business standpoint. That makes complete sense. But to commit to only 2 occupations for drilling completions, I just don't think that's appropriate, given the protections that are involved here.
Thank you, and I appreciate both of those responses, and I do think there are significant protections. To make sure that I understand, the intent here is to drill each well sequentially, right? The intent isn't, you mentioned exploratory, Mr. Pershala, and I know that there's an existing well on this pad that is producing, and so I do think, to some degree, yes, I understand that all wells in this area are somewhat exploratory, especially when there aren't significant numbers of wells in the area. When you say exploratory, we're not talking about drilling a well, seeing how it goes for a while, coming back in later. We're talking about the intent here is to drill all 6 wells sequentially within the calculations associated with the previous well. Am I understanding that correctly?
I don't want to speak out of turn, so I might let Mr. Levon answer that question more specifically. But there is logging and technical review that does go into each of the wells. So it's a little like, again, it's unlike DJ where you're just drilling, completing, and getting out because all the data has already been available, through thousands of wells, right? And so there is a little bit more that goes into each of these drilling, but it is a sequential project. That is correct. And Mr. Levon, if you have anything to add to that, please do so.
No, I think Laura could probably add some color, at least on the exploratory nature of this and what we're trying to accomplish from a developmental sense. Laura, could you touch on that at all?
Yes, I can. So the exploratory nature, as I think we covered it pretty well, but yes, the existing well is in one zone. We have 3 others that we'll be assessing with the logging. And depending on how that logging analysis goes, that will impact our ability. And when we say logging, that's typically another 30 days. So if I add this map wrong, I have 30 days to do the pad and roads that Holly mentioned, 30 days to do the pilot and assess the logs. And then we have 17 days to drill and 17 days to complete. So 34 days. Just in getting the first well to second well, in my mind, I'm kind of using that 4.5-month window up, if everything goes well. But we're looking at new zones to target other than what the existing well on the pad is. So that is what's taking some of this time and leading into our assessment that we'll need 3 visits on the pad.
And if I may, I think Anschutz was prudently planning the well development so that they weren't in the middle of drilling, November 28th, and they'd have to stop operations. They're really trying to drill and complete in these windows, construct, log, and think about that very thoughtfully rather than having to scramble in the middle of drilling a well.
Thank you. I appreciate the extended discussion on this point, and we'll consider the thoughts that you offered here. I also noted that in the CPW consultation and certainly in the wildlife mitigation plan, in section 6.3, there are a number of best management practices and standard operating procedures that Anschutz has agreed to. I see some of them, although I didn't go point by point in the 2A, and it's just a technicality to some degree, but the CPW consultation noted that they had not been entered into the 2A, and so wanted to verify that these that were included in the wildlife mitigation plan were the enforceable BMPs and SOPs. I did some spot checking, and I'm seeing a lot of them in the 2A. And so I just wanted to ask if you would please double check and ensure that all of those get into the 2A. I think it's a best practice to make sure they're in the 2A and not have to refer to a separate document for the BMPs and SOPs. Do you have any issues with that?
No, we'll absolutely work with staff to make sure everything's very clear in the Form 2A that aligns with the wildlife management plan.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. My final question has to do with drill rigs. We certainly talk a lot about different types of drill rigs, and particularly on the eastern slope, are doing our best to move towards grid-powered drill rigs. Certainly, there are many challenges on the west slope associated with that. But there are additional other drill rigs that are natural gas, battery backups. Here you've got conventional diesel drilling rigs that are proposed. This is outside of the ozone non-attainment area, and certainly our regulations allow for this. But they are increased emissions profiles, significantly increased emissions profiles. And in our efforts to monitor cumulative impacts, reduce emissions profiles, I wanted to ask you what your efforts are towards moving towards more emissions reducing drill rigs and kind of your plan for stepping into that if there is one.
Yeah, happy to touch on that. We mentioned just the exploratory nature of this, and some of the infrastructure that's related out there is pretty minimal. So when it comes to natural gas or hybrid rigs, it's pretty challenging to get any kind of gas out to the rig itself. We've had success in the past with CNG, but there's also additional impacts from emissions from that method as well. So, we are constantly evaluating our options when it comes to dual fuel options or electrical. But, just to give a little perspective, there's no pole power in this area. There's no additional power sources that we could tie into that could potentially move us in that direction. So our only real option right now is diesel. But from a company's perspective as well, we do want to eventually get to that. So as it comes available, as we build out additional infrastructure, that's something that we'll absolutely look into.
You're muted, Commissioner Ackerman.
You're muted,
Thanks for
Commissioner.
thank you for the discussion, and appreciate that. And I don't have further questions, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thanks for the initiating good questions. Further questions for the panel? Commissioner Messer?
Thanks. Couple questions. So if I recollect, and my memory is not always great, but Anschutz had an application in this area last year, or how close was that application to this one? And I'm just trying to get my bearings here a little bit.
Yes, Commissioner Messner, I believe you're speaking about the Mohi location that we went to hearing for. And I'm going to call in a friend on Taylor or Laura. I think they're pretty far apart from each other. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it's in a different geologic setting. It's in a separate fault block.
Okay. I couldn't remember the locations and how close they were, so that's helpful. I was trying to get my bearings there. Is there a federal lease requirement that that wells are drilled every couple of years, which is sometimes the case in kind of exploratory federal leases?
Thank you, Commissioner Messner. There's not a specific clause in the lease, but there is for the unit, the federal unit, and I'm going to let Whitney explain that. She's the landman for the area.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And Holly, that's exactly right. This pad is located on the Wiley Federal Exploratory Unit, and development on that unit is governed by the Wiley Unit Agreement, which we have negotiated with the BLM, and there are some drilling obligations associated with that agreement.
Does that include, I mean, Mike, I'm asking this question because I'm wondering if this plays into the multiple occupations or not, the need to drill a well every 2 years as part of that requirement.
The requirement is timing based across years, and so that may end up playing a role in some of our timing.
Okay. And then I wonder, I'm asking you to speculate here a little bit, and so I'm a question more of curiosity, but should things be successful here, and understanding you're looking at an exploratory unit, do you anticipate that there's the potential for multiple well pads in this area and associated infrastructure?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Messner. That's the hope. Anschutz is actively working other pads right now near either the Mohi or near this location. And again, they're actively looking at infrastructure capability for a bigger, bolder asset.
Okay. I've mentioned this before in other applications, but if there is, say that this was approved and it's successful and there was contemplation for multiple well pads, and we haven't seen a comprehensive area plan on the western slope yet. And I think that, as we look at potential wildlife mitigation, necessary infrastructure for produced water recycling and takeaway, oil pipeline takeaway rather than trucking, I would encourage, as you look to future applications, that more comprehensive planning be part of that, and looking at how to develop the necessary infrastructure in order to have the type of multi-pad development that really avoids, minimizes, and mitigates impacts. So that doesn't affect my decision on this particular application, but it's just a point that in these more exploratory federal units, I think it's an opportunity on the western slope that hasn't been seized yet. So no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Good notion, good proposal, good suggestion. Others with questions of the panel? All right, seeing none, we move to the deliberation portion of the stage. Commissioner Ackerman,
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I didn't mean to preempt you there if you had some
Nope.
words to say. Okay.
I didn't. I think there's a few things that we need to make sure that we deliberate on, and so at some point I'm going to call upon AG Boudreau, but please go ahead, Commissioner Ackerman.
All right, thank you. As with all OGDPs that take place in wildlife habitat, I extensively review the wildlife components, particularly as well as the other components, as I'm not certainly limited to wildlife considerations. And whenever there are multiple high priority habitats, I particularly pay attention with a keen eye. And certainly do take CPW's, as our state's wildlife expert, CPW's comments strongly into consideration. I appreciate that this is on an existing pad with an existing access road that certainly limits disturbance on that front. I wanted to make a point, we didn't really touch too heavily on this, but I don't have any issue with the requested variance and the requested waiver of this OGDP. I think they're in line with what we've done in the past, and certainly with CPW's recommendations. I appreciate that they're working with existing gas and produced water pipelines. And I do appreciate that Anschutz has worked closely with CPW And these timing restrictions are extensive, from December 1 to July 15th, and it does give them only a 4.5 month construction and drilling window. It is difficult for me to support 4 occupations when I see that show up in an OGDP. We talk about this very often. What's worse, moving into the timing restrictions or multiple occupations of a pad? And we do have differing recommendations on differing pads on this throughout the state and throughout time and among different regions. And I would just say that this really is kind of a bit of a case-by-case analysis as to what would be best, depending on the species, depending on the topography, and a number of other factors. And so this is one of the reasons that we lean heavily on CPW and their expertise on a site-by-site analysis and an OGDP by OGDP analysis as to wildlife impacts. I would note that CPW has found this plan to adequately avoid, minimize, and mitigate impacts to wildlife. And I appreciate the extended discussion that we had. The point that Anschutz isn't hedging and asking to bleed into the timing stipulations that are extensive, but rather is hard committing to strict adherence does stand out to me. I think that if you're going to have multiple occupations, it's important that you do adhere to those timing restrictions and you don't hedge and say, well, there's a chance we may bleed over. And so to me, it's a little bit one or the other when we're talking about occupations versus bleeding into the timing or one occupation bleeding into the timing stipulations. So that is a key point for me. Compensatory mitigation is part of this project, as was pointed out, both direct and indirect. I appreciate the agreement to work the BMPs that are in the wildlife plan into the 2A. And also would note, I think, as was noted in the presentation, that there are a couple of COAs requested by staff with regard to updated area photos and the bonding of reclamation. So that said, Mr. Chair, with the discussion that we had today, I'm supportive of this application moving forward.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ackerman. If I could recognize AG Boudreau to perhaps encapsulate the various variances and other COAs that we might need to be thinking about. And I'm not trying to truncate other discussion from commissioners. If other commissioners have discussion purposes, that's fine too. But first off, we'll hear from AG Boudreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I have so far is a condition of approval as described in the director's recommendation that the operator will submit via Form 4 sundry for the location, updated reference area photos taken during the peak growing season within 12 months of the Form 2A approval. I also have that the commission will address the Rule 1003B variance request, and if granted, that will include 2 conditions of approval as described in the director's recommendation. One regarding the amount of the bond, and the second being how the bond will be submitted to Ms. Debbie Lutz. I also have a Rule 1202C1R variance request, which the commission could take up and approve as requested by the operator. And then I also have Commissioner Ackerman's, I think it would be a condition of approval, that the operator will assist staff with the identification of all applicable wildlife BMPs to ensure that they are applied to the Form 2A. Does it sound like I've captured everything, Commissioner Ackerman?
Yes, I believe so. I'd have one clarifying question about whether we need to take up the variance separately. And I do certainly believe this operator's commitment verbally that they're going to work with staff to do so. But I do think it's been our standard practice to include that as a COA. So I appreciate you writing that in.
And it's my understanding that as both of the variance requests are associated with the OGDP, that I think you can take them up in the motion approving the OGDP.
Very good. Thanks for helping us clarify what's before us. Is there further discussion amongst commissioners? Commissioner Messner?
Thanks. Just a couple of things. I think Commissioner Ackerman covered it all, and thanks AG Boudreau for clarifying all the conditions of approval associated with this. Uh, so the applicant in their testimony and in the conditions of, or in the BMPs that are included in the Form 2A, has committed to abiding by the timing stipulations for all the high priority habitat areas for both pad construction, drilling, and completions. And so wanted to clarify that because it was ironic and a little confusing, I'll say ambiguous in the Form 2A that it utilized the term construction phase to include both construction of the pad, drilling, and completions. And I think that there's a little bit of confusion about what the term construction means. And so in this particular incident, it appears that construction means pad construction, drilling, and completions as far as this BMP goes. And so just wanted to confirm that that was the case, that it was all three phases of construction that was committed to in the timing stipulations. And so, so wanted to just point that out. And then, I appreciate Commissioner Ackerman bringing up this multiple occupation conversation and reading between the lines, it appears that one of the primary reasons for the multiple occupations may actually have to do with not having to come back and submit another OGDP for multiple occupations to meet their federal timing restrictions or timing requirements as part of an exploratory unit. And while I appreciate and acknowledge that, I think that it's better to just be clear that that is one of the reasons for the multiple occupations and not just that there's logging and different things that need to happen because in my math calculations, it seems like even with the logging, it could be done in two occupations. And so while I'm not willing to hang this OGDP up on that, I think it's important that it's clear as to what the need is for multiple occupations. And I think this is an exploratory area, and it's an opportunity for them to better understand the situation. And if there are additional opportunities for development to happen in this area, to see that comprehensive planning take place, to be able to look at opportunities for mitigating potential impacts by the development of more comprehensive infrastructure and planning that I think would benefit the operator in this situation should this area end up being successful. And so I think it's an approvable application, and so those are my thoughts, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Paschal, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, sir. If I may, just with Commissioner Mesner's point about the drilling obligations that may be in the federal union agreement, I just want to, I was conferring with my client that to the extent that those could come into play, just want to reassert that that was not part of the reason that Anschutz is asking for the variance for the multiple occupations. It is the variance is for this project alone. It is not being done in any way to kind of cover for any drilling obligations that might be in the union agreement. And so to the extent that you've got that implication or reading between lines, that is not the case for this project. We're asking for that variance for the occupations simply to be able to complete this project irrespective of any drilling obligations that might be in that federal union agreement. Thank you.
Commissioner Messner, any response?
No response. Appreciate the perspective.
Cool. Other commissioners with deliberative thoughts? Seeing none. Commissioner Ackerman, would you like to make a motion?
I probably. It's a complex motion, and so that's the only reason I hedge. But am I able to make a motion for approval of this application incorporating the COAs as previously articulated by AAG Boudreaux? Is that sufficient?
It's good with me, but we got to look to our lawyer just to make sure he's cool.
I'd be happy to reiterate it now that we're at the motion stage, if it's
That'd be
not too
helpful.
much of a waste of time.
Why don't you do that, AG Boudreau?
Thank you. So based on deliberations, I would recommend a motion to approve the application with the condition of approval that the operator will submit via a Form 4 sundry for the location, updated reference area photos taken during the peak growing season within 12 months of the Form 2A approval, that the commission approves the variance request to Rule 1003B with the two conditions of approval associated with that variance request as described in the director's recommendation, that the commission approve the applicant's Rule 1202C1R variance request, and that the approval includes a condition of approval that the operator will assist staff with the identification of all applicable wildlife BMPs to ensure that they are applied to the Form 2A.
Thank you, Counselor. And can I just amend that a little bit to include BMPs and SOPs?
Of course, yes.
Then I would so move, Mr. Chair.
And I will call it by so seconding. We now have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Pashala. Appreciate you and your client's presentation today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, commissioners. We appreciate your time.
All right. And again, big thanks to staff for getting us to the point where an OGDP once again daylights itself to the world. Great work. Good work, commissioners. There is nothing further on our agenda. I move we adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. See you next week. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you being with us.